My parents lied when they said it would be fun to have a baby brother, so I am sending him back where he came from. I'm not sure what temperature they had him at originally, but Mom usually bakes her buns at 425 degrees, and he stopped crying pretty quick, so that must have worked. When my mom came to pick me up from my session, the therapist concerned was plastered all over her face to an unprofessional degree. The bill I received soon after had family scratched out and a note written in the margin reading, "I don't know who the woman in my session before you was, but she sure knew you, and I'm inclined to believe your sleep paralysis episodes aren't purely illusionary." I carefully squatted behind one of the desks as the guy with the gun looked around the darkened classroom. Taking a few tiny steps side to side, I suddenly regretted asking Mommy for the light-up sneakers at the store. When I was a child, I was afraid of being suddenly attacked by monsters anytime I went downstairs into my basement. Now that I'm an adult, I discovered that I could keep just all of my friends in the cellar so they can warn me if there are any monsters before I go down there. "You really took a wrong turn, didn't you?" my wife said from the back seat of the car as I drove through the woods. "Jesus!" I screamed as I drove off the road, for I had buried her 10 minutes ago. I picked my son up from his first day of preschool today. He's only asked for his old mommy a handful of times since we left the city, so I trust he will acclimate better than the last one. After 20 years, I've had to hang up the close sign on my butcher shop. With the local morgue relocating, I just can't get those special cuts anymore. My parents rarely talk about my brother, who died when I was a baby. Walking through the halls, I heard my mother whisper to my dad, "He's getting too big for us to keep him down there, honey." She celebrated the new law that stated any injuries received during the commission of a crime would not be treated by medical professionals. She broke down sobbing, however, when doctors told her there was nothing they could do for her son, as he had been hit by the car while jaywalking. I coiled into a sobbing ball on the bathroom floor, biting my arm to stifle my screams. Self-loathing turned my stomach the next morning as I saw 379 new subscribers and a message from my agent. "Fantastic breakdown, babe. but most comments are still asking about your scars. So let's try the razor again tonight. I finally created my own functional AI, even though a lot of people tried to stop me and kept saying, "That's not possible for someone like you." The most astonished person of them all was the software engineer that created me. As the child strayed ever farther from her distracted parents, I prepared to jump from the shadows and take her. As her foot inched over the edge of the pool, I drew my sight. Mummy told me I am too old for my imaginary friend now, so I get rid of her. Now Mummy is just like all of my other imaginary friends. Only I get to see her. "Open up, it's the police," we yelled through the door to surprise the groom with a night out before his wedding. But when we unlocked the door and walked in, we found him crying at his computer, wiping his hard drives frantically. "Sir, I can assure you that we used every method available to us in order to identify the body that was discovered in the woods behind your house 6 weeks ago. In each of them, fingerprints, dental records, tattoos, birthmarks, and samples of hair, blood, and skin, which were sent out for DNA testing, helped us determine that you, sir, are dead." The old man next door would greet me every morning on my way to work, smiling warmly, offering me this or that he had cooked, and chatting about his kitten that he had taken in. I promised I'd take care of his kitten when he died, a promise I regretted now standing in his living room, looking down on the dead and decaying human corpse in his cage, cat ears and a tail nailed to its bones, piles of rotting cat food placed at its side. My lab partner, Caddy, took ages to open up fully, but the more she revealed her inner beauty, the deeper I fell in love. On graduation night, as I knelt to propose in the dissection lab, a voice yelled, "The hell are you doing with that cadaver, kid?" I made so many sacrifices so that my son could make it to his graduation, and no one was prouder than me when he walked across that stage. The complaints those girls made could have jeopardized his whole future, but fortunately, the ones that wouldn't take the money, I found another way to deal with. My grandma's last words were, "Don't go into the attic." After 2 thumps and a faint scream, I realized I should listen to her, and with tears in my eyes, closed the door behind her. With the guys watching, I've got to push her face in it, the groom thought. His wife reared up, her face a mass of cream and blood, the cake's metal support rod sticking from her eyeball. My mother always told me not to drink too much coffee because it stunts growth. And as I'm drinking my 5th coffee of the day, I'm hoping this also applies to the growth of fetuses. I told my friends I could get us fake IDs for the club tonight, and it wouldn't even cost us any money. It's super lucky that I found all of these random women driver's licenses hidden in my dad's sock drawer. Remove all the hair on your body if you want to live, he said. Then he handed me a pair of tweezers. So I hear you have a bug infestation, the man asks. All right, mouth open as wide as you can, please. Let's see what you've got there. Look into this mirror to see how you die. I did as the lady instructed, but it must have been a normal mirror because I only saw myself. On Reddit, people innocently answered the question, "What would you like as your last meal?" The next day, each person who answered the question received a box containing the very meal they described in the post. The hungry, homeless Middle Eastern man wept with a broken heart as people ignored and threatened him every time he tried to make friends. He didn't understand. He thought they'd be waiting for him to come back. "You're having twin girls," said the doctor happily. But when I looked at my husband's face, I knew I was going to have another miscarriage later that night. After 6 months lying bedridden, the doctor said they finally found a kidney for me from the remains of a girl brutally murdered by her teacher, who was still missing. After receiving the transplant, the thought of a heartless murderer walking free still leaves me breathless and vomiting. Hundreds of millions took the suicide pills rather than face the killer asteroid heading for Earth. The scientists who knew it would miss were all dedicated to population reduction and never broke their vow of silence. While playing The Sims, I realized I didn't like my family, so I drowned them. Now, I can get back to my game in peace. I killed my poor baby," Miss Mary shrieked after she accidentally stepped on her child and smashed its head in flat. "Will you go to the supply closet and get one of those plastic babies for Mary again?" the nurse said to the orderly, while charting that Mary's dementia was still making her relive a tragedy from 70 years ago. When I saw the spider, my first instinct was to grab my blowtorch. As I held my daughter down and tried to get it to light, I reminded her that I will not tolerate tattoos in my household. I paid the kidnappers $50,000 to give me back my daughter. Today, I got her first finger in my mailbox. I hadn't been able to speak or move in months, but I could still hear everything around me from my hospital bed. Now this patient has been in a coma for months, and he's what happens when you don't put your shotgun in your mouth. I wish for $1 million, I told the genie, who grinned widely and vanished in a cloud of deep blue smoke. 8 months later, to the dismay of his now ex-boss, my son's wrongful death lawsuit was found in my favor. My husband was really hurt when I told him I didn't want kids anymore. He was probably more hurt when he realized the crib was empty. My cell phone connected to the Bluetooth in my car automatically, so the cop who pulled me over heard every word. "Ma'am, I'm not seeing any officers on duty anywhere along I-90, the 911 dispatcher whispered. The doctor at the hospital told me there was little hope for my child. When I came back to him, I didn't find my child, the doctor, or the hospital. I like my coffee how I like my women. Iced, the coroner said, laughing to himself as he began undressing the corpse below him. I paid for my car to have the top-of-the-line safety features, like windows that could stop a .50 caliber bullet. After the accident, they also stopped the first responders getting to me before the fire did. Angered by my infidelity, my abusive husband dragged me to the mental asylum to get me a lobotomy. Upon being strapped to the chair, my pathetically terrified husband discovered who my lover is. "You'll regret this," Billy, the bratty kid from my class, told me darkly as I sentenced him to detention for disruptive behavior. I felt a sick feeling in my gut as I arrived at the school the next day and saw Billy tearfully pointing at me and telling the principal, his parents, and the 2 police officers next to them. And that's when he touched me. Down there. The genie said I could wish back 4 people. So I chose my father, grandfather, the man who shot JFK, and the man who drowned my hated baby brother. I said 4 people, said the genie. Pick 3 more. "You're so beautiful," he says whilst caressing my arm, paying close attention to the bumpy scars littering it. "Can you try going deeper for me?" "See you tomorrow, my lovelies," she said as she signed off from her TikTok account. Fortunately for her killer, viewers have yet to notice that her hands sometimes have too many fingers. People thought that a .22 caliber pistol wouldn't be enough to save me from a bear attack. But with one well-placed shot to my wife's knee, I was able to jog away. No problem. After a solid month of our daughter crying about a monster peering in through her bedroom window, my husband had the idea of making a trap. His name was Kenneth Smith. He lived down the street from us for years. My wife fell in love with someone else, and when I found out, she ran away with her, believing I couldn't put an end to it. I warned her not to get too attached if it wasn't a boy. So I don't know why there was so much drama when I found them. As a guy, I thought it would be funny to prank my girlfriend by using a pregnancy test. However, all I felt was confusion as the test results came back positive. I read my daughter a picture book that described royalty as having blue blood. The last words she whispered before passing out in the ambulance were, "I just wanted to see if I really was a princess, like you and Daddy told me." When I was around 7, we had a new next-door neighbor, a friendly old man who watched me a bit too closely, asking odd questions and secretly taking photos or videos when I wasn't looking. One night, I woke up to police sirens, and the old neighbor was in my bedroom whispering, "The couple downstairs are not your real parents. They kidnapped you years ago."